Today's scripture reading is taken from 2 Kings, chapter 5, verses 1 to 15. And I'll be reading from the New Living Translation. The king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. At this time, Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day the girl said to her mistress, "I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy." So Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. "Go and visit the prophet," the king of Aram told him. "I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel." So Naaman started out, carrying as gifts 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel said, "With this letter I present my servant Naaman. I want you to heal him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay and said, "This man sends me a leper to heal. Am I God that I can give life and take it away? I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent this message to him, "Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet here in Israel." So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elisha's house. But Elisha sent a messenger out to him with this message, "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored, and you will be healed of your leprosy." But Naaman became angry and stalked away. "I thought he would certainly come out to meet me," he said. "I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord his God and heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus, the Abana and the Pharpar, better than any of the rivers of Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed?" So Naaman turned and went away in a rage. But his officers tried to reason with him and said, "Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you should certainly obey him when he says simply, 'Go and wash and be cured.'" So Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times, as the man of God had instructed him. And his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. Then Naaman and his entire party went back to find the man of God. They stood before him, and Naaman said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant." Thanks be to God.
So as I just talked about with the children, God sometimes works through humble means. Lucy the Loon's problem was big, and it was solved by someone so small. Maxine the mouse, who had the idea to gnaw through that fishing line and free poor Lucy, had to speak up and enlist the help of Barry the bass. Each character in this story is small, but together they solve a rather paralyzing problem for Lucy. Together, as they listen to each other and work together, they bring about a good ending. Lucy, freed from pain, sings a song of thanks heard across the lake. Likewise, in our story from 2 Kings this morning, God works through humble, faithful servants. And the first of these humble characters is the handmaid of Naaman's wife. She is a nameless servant girl. She has no agency, no personhood. Even so, this Israelite girl, captured into slavery through the spoils of war, is bold enough to offer a solution to Naaman's leprosy. a skin affliction that posed a direct threat to his continued status, power, and wealth. One commentary suggests that her story is the story of the power of God working through small things. She doesn't have to come to Naaman's aid. After all, he is the one who holds her captive, and he could punish her for being so bold. Yet she risks speaking up and saying that the prophet of Israel's king will be able to heal Naaman of his ailment. So this story then is about the healing of mighty Naaman, a powerful army commander. He had leprosy, and the disease was progressing such that he wasn't going to be able to hide it anymore. When discovered, he would be considered ritually unclean and would lose everything he had: status, power, wealth. Naaman was desperate for healing. And healing does come to him. He immerses himself 7 times in the River Jordan, and he is healed and transformed. For not only is he cured of his leprosy, but he's also transformed in his relationship with God. In verse 15, he says, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Please accept a present from your servant." Naaman is fully healed. He is transformed in his relationship to God. He is healed, and we imagine that he goes on to live a good life. But how he is healed is what is quite remarkable. And not just because somehow the waters of the lowly Jordan could cure leprosy. He is healed by God through the powerless. His healing comes from God through a servant girl. This servant girl, the handmaid of Naaman's wife, says to her mistress, "If only my Lord were the prophet, or was with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." It is truly remarkable that she speaks up on behalf of Naaman. And what's even more remarkable is that he listens to her. This is shocking because really, who was going to listen to a lowly servant girl? Surprisingly, it's mighty Naaman. He actually listens to the counsel of an enslaved Israelite girl. And the moment he chooses to listen to her is the moment in which healing becomes possible for him. Then his journey takes him to a door and to the River Jordan, where Naaman receives healing, but not in the way that he expects. King Aram sends him to meet the king of Israel, laden with expensive gifts fit for a royal visit, and requesting that Israel's king heals Naaman of leprosy. Elisha somehow hears of this request and steps in, requesting that Naaman be sent to him. When he arrives, Elisha won't come out to greet him, but instead sends a messenger, a nameless messenger, to tell Naaman to bathe in the Jordan 7 times. When he reacts with outrage, after all, this isn't the kind of grand healing that he had been expecting, his servants persuade him to give it a try. And again, Naaman, in all humility, listens to them. He then emerges from the waters of the Jordan fully healed. God works directly through the waters of the Jordan to bring about that healing. And God works indirectly through all these humble servants. And Naaman, to his credit, listens and is healed. Now, I think we don't tend to listen to the powerless until we get desperate. Certainly Naaman had to get desperate before he listened. I think the same is true of us much of the time. We don't tend to listen well, do we? We ignore, tune out, and turn away more often than not. We don't listen to the voices of our Indigenous sisters, even as they fight for justice and insist on being seen and heard. We don't listen to the climate scientists and activists who say that the time for bold action was yesterday and that we'd better change our ways and fast. Usually, we don't listen until there is a problem or a crisis to manage. Naaman had to get desperate to feel the threat of loss before he would listen. Like Naaman, we wait until we are about to lose everything, until things are dire, before we really listen and actually choose to act in response. I wonder why. I wonder why we tune out those on the margins, those in pain, and even that still small voice within at times. Maybe we think we can't handle it. Or maybe we think there's nothing we can do about it. Maybe it's fear. Whatever the reason, over and over we muffle the voices of those in pain, those on the margins, and even that small voice within that would seek to transform us. Now, we never learn what becomes of the servant girl. Does Naaman go back and thank her? I'd like to think that he does, and that while he's at it, he asks her name. I'd like to think that he finds a way to share the healing received, even as he commits himself to worshiping the one true God of Israel. I'd like to think that his transformation is so complete that her status and well-being are elevated. I'd like to think that Naaman, thus healed, was moved to justice for those on the margins. Like Naaman, we all want healing at some point. We all want healing, but we usually want it on our terms, in ways that we expect, in the forms that make us most comfortable. We all want healing, but God does not promise it to us on our terms. We all want healing, and we have to be willing to listen. Naaman, after a bit of resistance, became willing to listen. He chose to listen to a servant girl, a nameless messenger, and his own servants. And this morning, I hear a call for us to do the same. To listen to the voices at the margins in this day and age, and in our time and place. Who are the servant girls in our time? We need to listen to those among us who are in pain, and we need to listen to the still small voice within, that voice that God uses to guide us. What is that voice telling us about where healing can be found, or how we might be conduits of God's healing for others? I wonder which voices we at OUC need to listen to more than we do. Who are the people in pain who need us to hear their stories and really listen? And where are we being called to participate in God's healing and transformation? My friend Jessica and I took great delight in working together with this text. She serves St. Paul's United in Richmond, a rural church where she is preaching a similar message this morning. Who knows what healing will happen with the folks in Richmond as they listen newly to the voices at the margins in their community and to their inner voices guiding them forward? Who knows what could happen here at OUC as we seek to listen in this way? I pray, individuals and as a community, we deepen our practice of listening for and to the voices at the margins. And I truly hope we learn to listen well and become allies for justice and healing in God's world. Because who knows what can happen when we begin to listen? Who knows what can happen when we put down our defenses and our expectations of the ways things ought to be? Who knows what healing can happen here at OUC or among the folks at St. Paul's? Who knows what healing can happen in our lives and in the world when we open our hearts and our ears and we really listen the way that Naaman listened to the servant girl? Shh. Do you hear that? The voices at the margins. The voices of those in pain. That still small voice within you. May God grant us all the ability and willingness to listen well. May it be so. Amen.